Well, good afternoon. I'll call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Community Corrections Partnership. We will take roll call. We'll go around the table, starting with the end. Pam Patterson. Please state your name and the agency you're with.
Pam Patterson, DA's office.
Robin McRae, Community Human Services.
Randy Gonzalez, Assistant County County Administration Office.
Mike Calhoun, the City of Carmel, representing the Monterey County Law Chiefs.
Sheriff Burnell, Sheriff's Office.
Marsha Parsons, Probation.
Kay Ryman, Senior Deputy County Counsel.
Teresa Risi, Superior Court.
Ferris Sabal, Monterey County Office of Education.
Elliot Robinson, Department of Social Services.
Berkeley Brannon on behalf of Dean Flippo, District Attorney.
Don Landis on behalf of Jim Deere, Public Defender.
Amy Miller, Behavior Hall. Evelyn County, representing OET, Joyce.
Thank you. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
There are no additions or corrections to the agenda.
Thank you. We'll start with public comment. Is there anybody that would like to make a public comment on any item not on the agenda today?
Yes, my name is McGregor Eddy. I'm the Secretary of the Monterey County Jail Reform Coalition, and this is directed to all of you, but especially to Sheriff Bernal. It's about information provided to families of people visiting our jail. Under AB 109, our jail has people that are there for longer now, and when people put money in the commissary, if you put $10 in the kiosk, it takes out a $5 fee. If you put $100 in the little kiosk, put money in, it takes out a $5 fee. So that people with little access to ready cash pay a much heavier percent, while people that are able to put in a larger amount at one time. And it seems to me that that could be done more fairly on a percentage, which some money systems have, where everybody pays the same percent. This way, the person putting in $20 takes out $5, they're paying 25%, while the person putting in $200 is paying 0.25%. So it's no 2.5%. So it's unfair to the poor people. The second thing is, if a person mails in a money order, which is another way to put money in the commissary, nothing is taken out. Now, they have to get the money order, but those are available free or for $1. And that information is not available on the website nor in the visitor kiosk room. And it would be very easy. It would not cost the county anything to let people know that there would be no money taken out if they mail a money order. It would not cost anything. So I'm requesting that the people in charge of the jail, and one of the main concerns that comes up here is the question of recidivism. One of the things identified in recidivism is people being separated from their families and finding it difficult and to stay. So these things that are hard for families, the costs to families that are very heavy of helping an incarcerated person, the cost of the phone calls is something that we need to look at as part of maintaining family connections while a person is incarcerated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Weston?
First off, I'd like to thank you to going to the Restorative Justice Conference. What I'd ask is that, as we requested from Supervisor Armenta and Supervisor Salinas, that we begin to move this type of meeting towards something that deals with the community partnership that we talked about. When you deal with contracts, or you deal with purchasing, or you deal with anything that we create different, that the model works with the impact of the community. And dealing with how that we've dealt with doing things before, we ask that probation could take the role that we had contracted with other agents. And then the resources could be put towards the health impact, the safety impact. With Elliot Robinson, he knows that part of the Lead Me Home plan deals with case management, but not case management that deals with issues or solutions, but that is restorative in nature. When that we deal with what hasn't worked, there was supposed to be a needs assessment done. $20,000 were supposed to be put towards that. I went to the Health and Human Services and gave some language for governance. So I'd like that when we look at what we're going to do with reentry, that it deals with the reintegration model. Not, I only use from my expertise of San Francisco, things that look at the impact on children, that look at the fiscal issues of not having things in place, like with Burnell, we met with Miller before, and in dealing with even how we release people from custody into community, if that we contracted with agents that are in community, that they would work so that they should be evidence-based, and that we look back 2 years and that we follow and do due diligence with the community that we asked. And where that I came from to I am, like you already know, my son died because he didn't see a POC. Medication wasn't given. And upon release at 2 o'clock in the morning, I mean, you're not dealing with the whole person. And dealing with reintegration, dealing with things like when that you consider the contracting to continue or not, we've asked that certain contracts would no longer exist and that you would do that role. So we would ask that you uphold what Simone Salinas and Armenta said and go forward with community input, with community service providers being able to be those service providers, and that the RFP that from the contract and purchasing would look at what was recommended by the supervisors and upheld. So it's due diligence and there's transparency and that we work together as a partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we have some minutes to approve. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion? Are you moving to approve both the February 8th and the February 29th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. You have the statistical data report before you. I hope we've had a chance to look at that. Are there any questions or comments? Robin Rodriguez, the management analyst, is here to answer any questions you may have. Did you do your homework or are you doing it now? Are there any public comments on the statistical report?
Yes, good afternoon. Elliot Rokowitz Roberts with the American Civil Liberties Union. I had some questions which I hope maybe Ms. Rodriguez can explain, or perhaps Sheriff Bernal. We noticed that the jail population is significantly down at this reporting period to 885. In addition, the number of non-sentence inmates has dropped to a low, which I think is really a positive direction. And I was kind of wondering, is this just is there a trend here, or can this be accounted for seasonally? I notice also that in terms of inmates released on OR, the number has gone up significantly to 246. And I'm wondering if we know, whether it's the judge or sheriff, whether we have those statistics to see whether the OR was granted by the sheriff or by the court. And then also I noticed the Work Alternative Program has a huge spike up to 292. So I'm wondering if we can have some explanation whether those figures are all related, whether they're just a spike or there's a trend here. Because I think they're all moving in a direction which is really what the CCP is working for, which is to reduce the jail population to get people into programs which will reduce the recidivism rate. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll address, I think I can address part of that has to do with, I think, Prop 47. And also some of it is due to pretrial services and I think you always see a decline, a dip peaks and valleys, due to the season also. So I think it's a combination of all three of those.
Thank you. Is there any other further public comment on the statistical report?
Madam Chair, I had a...
Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for
Yeah, I had a
comment.
couple questions. One is on the AB 109 geographic residency. What does other mean? 27%, it says, and you have Salinas, you have North County, South County, Monterey. So I'm just curious, it's a big, it's 25, over 25%. I just didn't know where do others reside?
The reference to other is including people who are currently out of the county
Okay.
or their address is unknown and they've absconded.
Okay, thank you.
Further comments from the board, questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to scheduled item agenda number B. We discussed at the last meeting putting together a budget workshop. Staff has done some work preliminarily for that, so I would ask Marissa Fiore, my management analyst 3, to come up and give a report.
Good afternoon, members of the CCP Chair. My name is Marisa Fiori. I'm a management analyst at probation. We just wanted to give you a quick update on our efforts toward presenting some documentation and information to your board in preparation of the January 2017 workshop, which is going to be part of the scheduled meetings for next year. And to advise you that we have started to research some of the issues that have been brought forth by your board. For example, fund balance, priority, criterias, and so forth. And we have contacted other colleague counties through a survey to the chief probation officers, which legislatively are the chair of the CCP in every county. And we have collected documentation. We also have contacts in other jurisdictions so that we can compile what we recommend as very viable strategies or strategies to address some of the concerns, fund balance and so forth. So we're planning a couple of presentations. One is for the August meeting, and that will focus on strategies and methodologies that have been used in other jurisdictions and what my work also for Monterey County, and also give a spotlight on the programs that are funded by AB 109. And then it's going to be followed in November with an in-depth look at the budget, the program budget, and the performance data, so that by the time your board reconvenes in January, you have enough information to them being able to make decisions.
Thank you.
If you have
Any
questions.
comments or questions for Marissa from the board?
Just the comment that kind of those are very helpful elements that I think will be useful.
Are there any public comments on the budget workshop going forward?
That I appreciate that, because we've asked, like with the $1 million contract and services and scope, that if there's criteria, then we can set standards. And by studying other counties, then we can look at fiscal impact, where resources can be put. And as that Bernal has stated, that through Prop 47, it's not just reclassification, but now where the monies will go for mental health services, substance abuse, and in dealing even with housing, when that we can look at where the money is spent and how that we're doing things, the transparency for constituents will be upheld. As that we ask for the Board of Supervisors to have you give a report for efforts to outcome. It's not just a breakdown of geographics, but knowing that there's culturally proficient services and support that reach into rural areas, like in South County. We have, the center to deal with reentry services, but just to deal with risk factors, expenditures, due diligence. I really appreciate the direction of first having the recommendation by studying other counties and seeing how that we can have the evidence-based and standardized language put for the quality of services and how that we do things and where that we put the money. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Is there any further comment or questions? All right, thank you. We'll move on to agenda letter C. Fiscal report update on AB 109. I'll ask my finance manager, Don Sosa, to address that.
Good afternoon, members of the Community Corrections Partnership. I'm Don Souza, the Finance Manager for Probation. And every quarter meeting will be updating this fiscal schedule that's in front of you. And the schedule today reflects just one change from the last report, and that is the California State Association of Counties on April 5th released a new estimate for the growth account. So the growth account was previously forecasted at $471,000, and the new amount is now right around $1 million. So that change had a domino effect, which takes us through fiscal year 20 to reflect a positive fund balance, where the prior report showed a deficit. There are no other changes on the report, and I will caution that, again, this is an estimate, and sales tax is collected through July and then audited, and there's a final release for the growth account done. I believe it'll happen in October, so these are estimates only.
Thank you, Don. Are there any questions or comments from the board for Don? Any questions or comments from the public? All right, seeing none. We will move on. Whoops. Sorry, Ms. Weston.
No problem. Just a request to show exactly where it came from, whether if it is AB 109 or Prop 47, how that money has came, and making it available for the public to see about what changed from the amount that was to the amount that is, and how, and that way then we can direct the way that it is spent in the future.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? All right, we'll move on to the final agenda item. I believe Don is giving this Local Innovation Fund sub-account report. This is something new this year, is that correct?
That's correct. So the Local Innovation Sub-Account was another account created as part of the 2011 realignment. The LIS, which is what it's referred to, is funded by a transfer of 10% of the growth from 4 other growth accounts. And they're delineated on the schedule that's part of your packet. Trial court security, community corrections, district attorney, and public defender, and the juvenile justice growth special accounts. The California, let's see here, CSAC, with the same update they gave us on the growth fund estimate, included an estimate of how this fund will be, what the amount will be for that fund in October of 2016, and it's estimated to be about $147,000. So basically, they take 10% of all the growth accounts from those 4 sub-accounts and fund this special account. The special account can be used as any funds in the juvenile justice sub-account, the district attorney and public defender sub-account, the community corrections sub-account, or the trial court security. So what needs to happen is currently probation is working with the county's general accounting office to set up the account. When the funding comes through, the board at that point in time will need to have the account set up, and then some direction will need to be done to how those funds are appropriated and spent.
So the CCP board would be wise to start thinking about how we would like to see those funds spent.
That's correct. As statewide, CCPs are taking and making recommendations to their boards potentially for how the funds should be spent.
And this money is due to fall in September?
Actually, I went through and reviewed the documentation from the state, and they're predicting an October 2016 deposit of the funding.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, a couple questions. One, is this a one-time funding, or is this is this going to be ongoing?
It's ongoing.
So it'll be every year we'll get around the same amount of money?
You will not get the same amount of money. It depends on what the four sub-growth accounts
Okay,
are,
so
what those amounts are.
okay.
But 10% will continue to be taken from those accounts, provided those accounts actually come to fruition. Because the growth accounts get funded with, once the main accounts are funded, if there's anything left over with the sales tax. So there are potentials in economic downturns where there will not be any growth funding.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions from the board?
And is this amount, it's separate from our growth allocation that you listed on the previous page? Is that?
I took into consideration the fact that they're going to be taking 10% of the growth amount. So the amount they reported was more like $1,113,000. So I already skimmed off the 10%.
I see.
And netted that. That's a good question.
Why do they, do you understand the theory of this? I mean, why do they take 10% of it out and not just include it in there? Do we understand that? Or?
I believe it's probably part of when the government statute was created, along with the recommendations from the alignment committee. That was part of some of the process they went through.
Because we have, $12 million, almost $13 million budget, but then we have this little separate pot of $147,000 that we're supposed to, and we recommend really on both how to spend that money. We recommend to the board. It's just odd to have this separate pot of money, and I just didn't know if there was any statutory intent that differentiates it from the other revenues that we get.
I believe the documentation that we received indicates that it's supposed to provide some type of innovation for the board to make decisions on. So kind of outside the scope of the CCP with AB 109. So it takes from 4 different pools, but it can be spent on those 4 items. So if there's more of a board inclination to look at the juvenile justice aspect versus trial court, so they have a little bit more, perhaps, freedom for decision making.
Thank you, Dawn. Are there any other questions, comments from the board? Public comment on the last agenda item? Ms. Weston?
Along with you giving a budget workshop to the board, I would like to request that prior to doing anything with this, that public has a workshop that they can understand where funding comes from those different directions, like if it's to be used to stop truancy or for community service. I would like to request that the public is made aware and part of this in a participatory budget manner, because as the question was asked, if it's not clear here, then how are you going to justify that before anyone? When that we deal with how we do things with best practice, then especially fundings that give us a scope, and we deal with cost, causes, and schedules. Like you went to the restorative justice, we can create a new model if it's innovative, but with whose innovation? When you include the public in there, aware of the dollars and the cents, and when that you include the stakeholder family, when you deal with community, if you dealt with focus groups, if you do a lot of work around this, then in our county, then we can have a standard. We can provide good services with quality. And like it's already been brought up, that we're reducing the numbers of those incarcerated, but now how that we spend for the community as a whole, then it would be really good to have a budget workshop that also explains this innovative grant so that we can be part of this process.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. My name is Israel Villa. I'm here from Salinas. The lady mentioned Juvenile Justice Committee. I was recently doing some research on the BSCC and learned that every county gets money for juvenile justice, right? So I'm wondering if the community has access to know who is on the committee and how do we find out? And more importantly, as Pam mentioned, where is this money, how is it being used, right? Juvenile justice to me would be alternatives to detention, truancy, so on and so forth, right? I think it's very important that especially, we know the problems we have here, right? And if we want to help, that our funds need to be used in the right way rather than incarceration, because that doesn't solve no problems.
Thank you. The juvenile arena is really beyond the purview of this board, of the Community Corrections Partnership Board. But I think if you go on the internet and access the Board of State and Community Corrections website, it will tell you the members on that committee.
For our county?
I may be mistaken. I don't know if we have members on that county, from this county, but are you talking about the statewide committee?
Yeah, but it says that every county receives money for juvenile justice, right? And she just mentioned it right now about the Juvenile Justice Committee. So do we have one here in Monterey County?
Well, we have what's called the Juvenile Justice Commission, and its purview is, I think, a little bit different than what you're speaking about. But if there's a statewide juvenile justice, there's a statewide juvenile services committee.
Right.
And I think if you access the Board of State and Community Corrections website, it will tell you the members on that committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? All right. Any further comments from the board? Any announcements from the board? We are adjourned. Thank you.